Welcome to the Art Plus Music Plus Technology podcast. This episode is brought to you by Centrozune, which is a trio: Bernhard Wastenrich, Marcus Reuter, and Tobias Raber. You can find more about Centrozune at centrozone.de. That's CENTROZOON.de. And with that, please enjoy this episode of the Art Plus Music Plus Technology podcast featuring Peter Grenader. Okay, today I have the great pleasure of speaking to someone whose reputation has been around me for a long time. I've never actually talked to him before, and so I'm looking forward to this opportunity. His name's Peter Grenader. He has got quite a history in our neck of the woods. He was involved in an awful lot of electronic music at its inception. He's been involved with a lot of amazing music makers, but unfortunately, he is mostly known for having been the person behind Plan B. That was a company that cratered relatively spectacularly at one point. I think that there might be a lot of concerns about him, but I'll tell you, a couple of weeks ago, I spoke to Jill Frasier. You all would have heard that interview by now. She spoke so highly of him, and I was like, I have to talk to him in order to make my own opinion. And so that's what you're going to get to hear. So with that, I'm going to welcome Peter to the podcast. Hey, Peter, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. I don't know what I should say after that introduction, but let's go.
All right, let's go. So, just to clear the air, and I'll tell you something. I was involved in modulars forever, but I was never involved I was a real late joiner into both the Eurorack world and the Muff Wiggler world. So all of the stuff that happened before I even gave a shit.
Right.
But when I came into the community, all of a sudden I saw all of these fireworks going off, and I didn't know even what was going on. Didn't seem like something I should care that much about.
Here's the deal. Let's take the premise of the classic haunt movie. Ghost is a ghost because he has to or she has to fix something they screwed up, and when they do, they go wherever they go. That may happen to me, but it will not. Will not happen over this issue. I will tell you, I have settled this issue. Yeah, I screwed up in a public relations way. I took care of it. There's no one that's been unpaid. There's no one that hasn't been apologized to. But most important, Darwin, I learned to have respect for the mistake I made and the effect I had on people, and that is very key. Okay, because then I'm empathetic. I'm not defensive, okay? It's all settled. There's a few people that are going to hate me forever. And I will tell you, without going into detail, there are issues with me, with Muff Wiggler, that go well beyond anything I've done. Right. Okay, there's political things in play that are stupid and silly, and I couldn't tell you what they are because I've been banned for life, okay?
I see.
So tell me, text me if they say something good about me. But, and that's the thing. I paid the price for my errors, and I did make mistakes. It wasn't as bad as it got blown up to be. I mean, everyone circled wagons. I was accused of being a cocaine addict, a meth addict. I was accused of watching tranny videos at work. It got stupid, but it is what it is, but it's over. And I think I didn't release any products until it was taken care of, and I wouldn't have released a product until taken care of. And the product did very well. It actually sold more outside of the oscillator, that's Model 15, which is, I'll never have another one like that. Mm-hmm. It sold like right up there. It was exactly what I thought, and I was very careful. I have a good barometer, and I've learned to take my ego out of evaluation of how do people feel about me, and I just read it, and it's like, okay, now's time. And it's okay. I mean, I'm personally over it, and I've moved on. The people that I unfortunately involved in it have moved on because they've been taken care of. And I'm sure there's going to be people that don't like me. But there's nothing I can do about that, Darwin. It happened.
Yeah, that's a good point. And, I have to admit, I'm not without my sins. And I'm sure I left plenty of people on the side of the road that hate my guts. And I know that there are plenty of people whose guts I hate. So I think maybe that's just what happens when you're around for a while, too.
Yeah. Now, the one problem I have with Darwin is that when it does come up, it's always weaponized.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I'm going to have to live with that, and I'm good for it.
Well,
Yeah,
what's interesting is it seems like, too, you kind of got caught in a bad place because you were villainized by an internet community that just realized it had some muscles, right?
right.
And so maybe that was the real misfortune for you is
Yeah.
that all of a sudden you were the first person that got to feel the strength of this adolescent community.
It's immature for me to say there's other people that did worse things than I did, but there are other people that did things that never took care of them.
Yeah.
Just screw it. They went AWOL, and I wouldn't have that. Matter of fact, life was really bad for me, and I deserved it. Okay, I mean, I lived out of my car with my dog for 3 months. I sublet my apartment. I used to wait around my dad, wait for him to go to work, and I'd sneak into his house with a soldering iron and build a Model 10 and go over to my worldwide distributor at the time was Big City Music, just so I could have money for dinner. Okay,
Hmm.
so I paid those dues. I deserved it. Okay, I'm not pulling out the violin, but when I got the gig with Kevin Key in 2011, I think it was, Kevin came over to my house. He had a module that needed to be calibrated, and he brought up the idea of licensing two of my products. And we did it. And the first payment before I got a penny was $6,000 to LB. First payment.
Hmm.
I paid other people while I could through the most unfortunate means possible. I got the means to take care of everyone when my father passed away. And honestly, if you can call everyone that got paid at that time, the money came from the Grenadier Family Trust. The estate attorney paid everyone before I got a dime, and that's the way I wanted it. So I feel I'm karma free on it. I understand that, we all know that we cannot influence people's opinions, and I have to live with that, and I'm fine with that.
Okay. Well, you know what?
Yeah.
I appreciate you being willing to talk about it and sort of clear the air because now we can talk about other stuff.
Yeah.
So, but before we totally put the Plan B thing away, I do want to ask a couple of questions about it because, again, it
Sure.
was I came along kind of after that. I remember looking back in it and being like, "Oh my God, how did someone produce all this stuff?" It was
Yeah, it was.
amazing. And then also, when I talked to friends of mine that had been doing it for a while, had been doing the Euro systems for a while, so often they would point at either the Model 15 or the Model 12 and 13s as being the best of class, the things that they turn
Thank
to
you.
musically all the time.
Thank you.
Right.
I'm very proud of the 12 because that was my concoction.
Mm-hmm.
I got what's his name's book, the Filter Cookbook,
Don
he-
Lancaster.
Lancaster's book.
Yeah.
And I said, okay, I get it, I get it. And I said, let me make a state variable filter. And I said, Fractals would be perfect for this. And I swear to God, Darwin, it didn't work at first. I made a couple of mistakes,
Uh-huh.
but then when the sound came out, I was like, holy God, I did it. Because look, I could put the number of days I've had in a formal electronics education on the head of a pin. None. Okay, we left Cal Arts and we had these huge Buchla 200s, and suddenly we're like, what are we going to do? Make music with rubber bands? I got a job at Serge's place just soldering,
Uh-huh.
and my dad, bless his heart, was like, I know you're going to be the next Aaron Copeland, but right now you know the color code. Get out of the goddamn house, get a job. Okay, and I went in electronics for like 12 years, and that's what gave me how would I say it, guilty knowledge of how to do it. And for
Sure.
me, design is just taking a patch and it's one step down. You
Uh-huh.
need a random voltage generator. What do you need? You need a voltage controllable clock. You need a noise source. You need a sample and hold, blah, 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 blah. So it's patching one step down. But the Model 12, I'm very pleased of. And I'm coming out with a dual. There's one delay now because the switch that I had spec disappeared.
Mm.
And I have to respec another part. But it's got an incredibly good low end and it's dual. And before the Model 12 never went into full resonance, I didn't let it because it sounded like a kazoo, but I fixed it. So it will oscillate now.
Oh, nice.
But Darwin, I do it as a hobby now.
Oh, yeah.
Before, honestly, prior to up to 2008, I was after world domination. I wanted my goal, and we did make it, is to have an all Plan B system. And we did produce them. We made about 6 of them. And that's not including the Nine Inch Nails things and all that stuff. This is production stuff.
Right.
And I got there. Of course, I dropped all the plates once I got up there, but that happened. But I did make it. Now I could care less. And I think more than anything else, that's just being practical, because when you have 400,000 competitors, no one's going to do that well.
Right. Well, it is quite a different landscape, that's for sure. And I was going to ask, now instead of having 50 modules, you've got a couple, and I was wondering how the business model for you had changed. And for you, what you're saying is that basically it's changed, in that you're not worrying about global domination anymore.
That's it. And I have 6 modules ready to go right now. I mean, bill of materials ready.
Uh-huh.
3 of them I've already given to my subassembler. All I have to do is say go, and they go. The old modules is a problem. I lost all the files. I had my laptop stolen out of my car that had all the printed circuit board files for the through-hole modules. So in order to do it, I have to redesign faceplates. Printed circuit boards.
Yeah.
Wait, I might do it someday, but I'm in no hurry, and I just want. I don't know about you if you've made drastic life changes as far as your directions, but in order to do that, to deal with that stress, I've always told myself, Peter, you can always go back to what it was before. Go in this new direction. If you don't like it, go back.
Right.
And always allow yourself to revisit it later. And that's how I got back into music, and that's how I'll get back into this. But right now, if it feels good, I'll do it.
So let's talk about your history a little bit, because
Okay.
there's some amazing history in your life.
I got
You
really
came out
lucky.
of the amazing Cal Arts world, which
Yeah.
back in the day was, I mean, they were hatching the amazing composers of the future out of that place.
And
That's
it's
where
funny
Jill.
because at the time, Darwin, we were nothing. Columbia, Princeton, and Albany, and the University of Illinois,
Champaign-Urbana, yeah.
that's it. They were getting and Austin. They were getting all the national attention. And Mills College. We were like, yeah, Mort, whatever, but now that's become a legend. And all I got to say, I was extraordinarily lucky to be in the right place in the right time. Jill as well, Gary Chang as well.
Yeah.
And we were the first generation of students, with Mort. And the greatest thing about CalArts was Mort, all the things he did wrong about designing that program. For one, I'm a composition student, and they didn't give us orchestration. That's crazy, okay?
Yeah.
Look, his first year, he didn't even get chairs. He wanted everyone on the floor. I wasn't there. Okay. But something he did very right, he had a budget amount of money for X amount of professors, and he never intentionally didn't hire one of them. Instead, he would use that budget allocation to bring in visiting composers. Let me just give you partial list. Aaron Copland, Vladimir Gruchevsky, Milton Babbitt, Prill Smiley.
These are people that came to your classes?
I got stoned with Phil Glass.
Oh, jeez.
Okay, Lamont Young. I can't remember one that was very significant for me. Oh, Jacob Druckmann taught me how to write music in 1 week. John Cage. I was there the moment Joan LaBarbera first laid eyes on Mort. She came out with John Cage, but she didn't go back with him. She stayed. I mean, it was love at first sight. I was standing there. I was like, oh, my God, look at that. And they've been, very happily married for 1,000 years now.
Yeah, indeed.
So I was very fortunate, okay? And that music did become, I'm putting this in silent quotes, historic.
Right.
And I was able to benefit for that. And, I tripped back into modulars or electronic music to begin with. I don't want to go into that story, but I worked at a speaker company, and 2 guys worked at Moog, and we started talking, and boom, suddenly I was hooked again. And I wrote a piece of music, and because I had been a graphic designer for 12 years before that, I was so used to people hating what I did or loving it. I wasn't as bashful to mail things out, and I just mailed this piece out to about 14 music festivals, and I friggin' won one of them in Barcelona. I was like, what? And that opened a lot of doors. And then, Miller and Kreisel basically went out of business. I was like, what in the hell am I going to do? And I just said, okay, let me try synths. But what I did is I enveloped myself in the world of music again, and I was very lucky. Can I tell you a great story?
Sure.
I was on the phone once with this guy, a high school friend he's the guy that said, you got to check out this class. We had a teacher that had a VCS3. You got to check this class out.
In high
And I
school?
did in high school.
Oh,
And he
geez.
was the best music theory teacher I ever had, including CalArts. Okay. Anyway, so it opened a lot of doors. So I just happened to be on the phone with him, and I got a click on my phone, and I said, Mario, hold on. It was Don Buchla. And I said, Don, can I call you back? And I came back to the phone, and he chuckled. I said, yeah, that was Don Buchla. I told him I'd call him back. 3 minutes later, Darwin, strike me dead if I'm lying. Another click, it was Bob Moog.
Oh, man. Oh, God.
And I said, okay, Mario, this one, I got to take this one. And it's just been like that. I've become friends with Wendy Carlos. I tripped into it. I kind of manipulated that to happen. But I did it very passively and much to her enjoyment. We're still good friends. I mean, an ex-girlfriend and I had been to her studio. She did a private recital for us in 2009 in her studio. That is a life pinch me moment.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah,
So, do you feel like a lot of this happened because it was a small community and people were looking to make connections and friendships? Or,
I don't know, because I entered back into it through academia.
okay.
I went the festival route, and I was a
Right.
board member of SAMUS. And I got back into it only because I went to a NAMM show in 2001, and that was when you were Dieter and Analog Systems was there. And I looked at their stuff, and I said to myself, oh, shit, Moog won the war.
Yeah.
It was kind of the Moog anthology.
Right, right.
And I was working on music, and I was tweaking Buchlas and surges, and it was not going to happen for me. I couldn't do it. So I started designing stuff on my own. And then one of these days I said, screw it. Let's test the water again, and let me see if anyone will buy this stuff. And that's how that started. And I am very proud of that, though I get no credit for it. And maybe that's not important. I have to take my ego out of it. But all this talk about East and West Coast, this was Gary Chang and I talking about it in blogs, okay?
Yeah.
Low pass gate and the Steiner filter. This is me. Ken Stone and and Kevin Leitner was a tech who passed away. We were the Steiner filter guys, and Mark Verbos and I were the ones trumpeting the low pass gates. So, and now I notice that Reactor has a low pass gate
Yeah,
module.
right. Go figure.
That's nuts. Yeah.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned Niall Steiner because you have kind of a long history of working with and around him, right?
Yeah. And he's one of the most generally wonderful men I've ever met in my life. Oh, God. He's just like, those pictures of Jesus with the lambs and the kids all circled at his feet. This is then like Niall. He's just such a wonderful guy. And he had a similar collapse. So we really had that in common. Okay.
Right.
So I never had to establish my credibility with him because he knew exactly what I was saying.
You didn't have to explain it to him, right?
No. And he's a pleasure to work for. And I'll tell you one thing that broke my heart. One day we worked on that circuit for a long time. And he said to me, Peter, I just want to tell you something. For 12 years since I retired, I've just been screwing around on my bench, making oscillators out of neon lights. And now I feel like I'm working again. And he thanked me. I was like, are you kidding me? He just said this. Right?
He's
a
thinking
great guy.
right?
Yeah, I know. And he's just such a lovely man. And, when he collapsed, he went in the studio and his work. You know who got him into it? You know who Ian Underwood was or is?
Yeah.
He used to play keys. He used to play keys with Zappa.
Right.
He used to use Steiner Parker systems. Niall used to play his trumpet with the Utah Symphony. And that's how it started. And he was doing it for he was basically in the Wrecking Crew for 17 years.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, that sound was all over everything. From that middle disco period on, that was such an iconic sound coming out of L.A.
Yeah, and if you listen to Apocalypse Now, you're like, shit.
Yeah, there he is. Right?
Yeah. So, and he's just a great guy. We might do another module together.
Oh, that's cool.
We really enjoyed working with one another.
That's nice.
And we split it right down the middle. And I couldn't have been more pleased. And that circuit, his core, that new filter has never been released. It sounds similar, but it does a lot more. But I completely ripped the crap out of it, and we added things, and he was so open to it.
Oh, that's cool.
It was never possession and
Right.
who in the hell are you, and that kind of thing. So
yeah, and the great Wazoo, why are you talking to me in that way, right?
yeah.
Well, let's talk a little bit about your design chops, because you said that you've
Okay.
got no formal training, but you did spend a
Nope.
lot of time with soldering iron under your fingers.
Yeah.
What was the process that you went through to learn synth design? I mean, you
Okay.
talk
Well,
about
how about
sort of like
let's,
this patch level down. Where did you
yeah.
learn those level down pieces?
Well, let's take it one step down. How did I learn electronics? I lied. And I got it. I swear to God, I got a job as an engineering tech for a company, and the guy clocked me in a microsecond. He basically said, "You don't know what the hell you're doing, do you?" And I said, "No. Should I quit?" And he goes, "No, I'll just teach you. I prefer it. It's easier." And that's how I got my basic chops.
Unreal.
Okay. As far as modules, I learned how to analyze schematics. So the Model 15. Let's start there. The Milton sequencer kit preceded it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and I just wanted voltage control of direction.
Right.
That's a stage assignment, and that's why I did that. And there's a very easy way of doing that, using a CMOS digital part. I'm not going to go into it, but it has a bus address input that you can convert from analog voltage in about 2 seconds.
Oh, okay.
Don Buchla, remember the famous legend of his kits in the 90s? You remember this?
Yeah, the garage thing.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
might get a schematic, probably won't. You get a faceplate and a printed circuit board that has no silkscreen graphics on it.
Everyone I knew
Okay.
that had some of them, they were sort of like on little picture things on there. Nobody ever made
Yeah.
a damn circuit out of them. They just it was like having a baseball card signed by
Yeah.
Don, you know.
Well, there's a guy in Kentucky, I think he is, Guido. He goes with Joe something, goes by Guido. He contacted me because he had a 258 kit,
Uh-huh.
didn't know what to do with it. I said, I'll build it.
Okay.
I low bid him, the other person that was going for it, because I wanted to hear those, because even Mort agrees with me that the 258 was the best VCO that Buchla ever made.
Yeah.
And I did it, and I looked at the circuit, and I said, well, one, his core, that triangle core is not his circuit. The sign shaper is not his circuit. These are old Navy circuits.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And I said, well, this is a shitty way of doing the comparator for the reset. This is a shitty way of doing the conversion to square wave, a shitty way of making a sawtooth. And I redesigned it using ICs and not transistors. And that's the Model 15. And I added some things, but not much.
Right.
So that's the Model 15. And the reason it sounds unique is I introduced the AC/FM into another part of the circuit. It's not where people usually put it. And I have a triangle core, which has less harmonic content.
Mm-hmm.
Now think about this, Darwin. If you have a core, if the heartbeat of your synth if your oscillator has less harmonics, you're going to get a cleaner FM sound.
Right.
Because you're not dealing with the partials in that early level.
The mess that turns into, right.
Yeah, so that's how I did it. And then it's deduction, and it's breaking things down to functional blocks. Okay, and you'll find that you use the same functional blocks for different modules because it's the same function. It's just you're patching it differently. It's like a pre-patched synth, but it's a module. It all matters where you put the output jacks, right? What makes it a synth or a module?
Right.
And that's kind of how I did it. And oddly enough, I worked my ass off. We got 24 modules done by '08, and I only had 2 major, oh shit, that shouldn't have been like that, and it's out in the fields.
Uh-huh.
I made a mistake on the Model 10. I forgot to put a current limit resistor on a diode that would blow if you did something wrong. And there was one other item. We fixed both of them.
Well, that's cool. Now, one of the things that you were kind of known for, and I think you kind of still are, is using Vactrols.
Yeah.
And was that just from the influence of looking at Buchla's circuitry, or did you just find them to be particularly musical?
Well, 2 reasons. One, the Buchla influence, they sound amazingly brassy for filters.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I said, okay, there's a winner. And then for other things, it's really friggin' simple. Okay. If you want a crossfader, just use a Vactrol, or you can use 17 other components and 2 op amps.
Right. Right.
The problem, and that's exactly the way Don thinks, and as severely brilliant as he is, and I spent a week with him in Berkeley. I was the first guy to demo the 200E at NAMM. Amazingly brilliant. Intelligence that we can't even pretend to understand. Some of his design stuff, he didn't know what he was doing either. He's got parallel resistors when you don't need them. He's got screwy values. You can tell he's chasing a problem instead of understanding. Bob Moog would not have done that.
Right.
Bob Moog did not have the creativity that Don did, but he sure had the engineering chops that Don didn't. Okay, and the Vactyls came out of that. Mostly I use them in filters, but I also use a Vactyl in my random because it is friggin' easy.
Right.
Now it's a problem because they're what, $15 each. They used to be like $3.
Yeah, well, and they're going to be getting increasingly hard to come by, right?
Yeah, they got cadmium in them. That's
Yeah.
lead.
Yeah, that's not
They
good.
had what they used to tell me is they had a waiver, and the waiver ran out for Rojas. And I
Interesting.
can't complain about that. I don't like the idea of lead and stuff, so I get it. You
Right.
know.
Yeah. So you actually, I was going to ask you about this just in terms of your design work, because
Yeah.
you kind of implied it in other things. This idea of instead of engineering your way to a solution, sort of like feeling your way to a solution. You kind of mentioned that in the way Don works, but it seems like
Yeah.
some of your stuff has that too. I mean, if for no
Yeah.
other reason than some of your current module line has
Yeah.
got some pretty wacky named stuff. And so when something gets a wacky name, I generally assume it means it didn't already have a name. you know?
Well, you're funny about that because I really hate people that name knobs like, blah, blah, blue or
Yeah, right.
crunchy. It's just like, dude, in 15 years, when someone buys this on eBay after this whole fad is over, they're not going to know what the hell this thing does.
Right.
Okay, so that's my feeling. But what I did do, Darwin, is look at a rubber band and say, how can I make that a better rubber band? That's something that people overlook. You know, someone that nailed it more than anyone? 2HP. Those guys nailed it. That idea was under everyone's nose for 20 years. No one thought of it.
Right.
And they did it. But I did the same thing with the multiple. I needed a multiple in order to have a system. I said, well, shit, how do you make a multiple better? I made it a buffered mold. I was the first one to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And it's as simple, but it was different. And I did the same thing with my Heisenberg and the tap generator. I couldn't have done it without Phil Gallo, but the tap clock was just a paradigm shift. No one had ever upscaled. Nobody, not in modules. Instead of, you have a clock divider which divides down, easiest thing in the world. But how about pressing in a whole notes and calculating the correct value for eighth note triplets? Not so easy.
Right.
Or actually determining the pace based on two depressions of a button and doing it linearly and metrically. I mean, that was a real accomplishment. I couldn't have done it without Phil. Phil did all the coding. I did the electronics. So that's the answer to your question. I said, I'm not going to do electric note circuits. I refuse.
Right.
And I'm going to make things that are a little bit more interesting. I'm going to think about things. Now, I had the benefit of being a composer, okay, and saying, what do I want to do? Matter of fact, Darwin, a lot of my modules came into existence based on one piece of music, The Secret Life of Semiconductors. And I would design modules because I needed them for that piece. So that's what I did do that I think others didn't. Schwayman, he's not a musician.
Right.
So he would have a VC input that turned off the knob when the VC was in there. It's like, no, don't do that, dude. Bob Moog was kind of a musician, but not really.
Right.
So I would think of things differently like that. I'm not saying I'm bright. I will say that I took a second to catch my breath and think about it before I put my name on it.
Well, I think one of the things that comes across with your designs, from whether you go back to the Morton or the Plan B stuff, or you look at the current stuff, you have opinionated designs.
Yes, I do.
And I think that there's something valuable about that, because if nothing else, it allows potential customers to take a look and say, well, does that match what my needs are, or doesn't it?
Yeah.
Instead of being so, one of the things that really gets tiresome is when any instrument is designed in a way in a way that's so generic nobody can say something bad about it, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because there's a lot of bad things to say about a trombone, but if what you need is a trombone, what the hell are you going to do, right?
Yeah, and the funny thing is that the guy, what is his name, Bernie something, the Electronotes guy.
Yeah, Bernie
If one of these,
right.
if his estate said, guess what, you got to pay us a license now, half the modules in the Eurorack world would disappear. Okay,
Right.
and there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, look, who told me this the other day was brilliant? Grant Richter on the phone. He said, yeah, every kid with a college loan is doing a module, and we can't blame them, can we? I said, no, we can't. So they're in the dorm room at night. They do a module. Some of these guys are really really stepping out on a diving board like Grant did, like I did. We quit our jobs. We really committed. And some of them are like one-offs, and that's fine. That's fine. I'm just glad people have choices.
Right.
Okay. I'm not the digital analog guy. I love digital instruments. I think a digital delay will kill an analog delay any time of the day. I'm just glad. Before we didn't have choices. You had a Steiner Parker system. You were stuck with it. So thank God we have choices now.
Now, let's talk a little bit about your work both as a composer and a performer. Because,
All
again,
right.
a big part of your and my conversation right now came up because in talking with Jill,
Yeah.
I was looking at the work that she was doing with the Zizek Society.
Yeah.
And who's one of the players of the Zizek Society but Peter Grenader? And,
Yeah.
I'm like, is that the same Peter Grenader I know? And she was like, probably. How long have you been performing with that group, and how long has it been since you kind of got back into performing?
Okay. One, let me just say for the record, I know she's listening. It's been an absolute pleasure working with Jill. She has ultimate confidence in my musical and compositional chops as I do in hers. So I can say, like, for instance, we tracked Danny Carey. I pulled in a friendship favor for this record. And I said, you want to come? She goes, I trust you. You can do it. And I'm the same way with her. It's really common when you have a garage band playing Smoke in the Water. It ain't so common when you're doing Stockhausen music, okay? You know what I mean?
Right.
So I'm very fortunate in that. I love performing. It all started in 2007. I was very fortunate to ask to do a live analog ensemble at Red Cat, Roy at the Disney Calais Theater downtown LA. And I asked Paul Sandra. He flew in from Wales. I couldn't believe it. I asked Richard Devine. He came from New Orleans, okay? I got Alessandro involved, Gary Chang, Chaz Smith, and this fantastic visual artist. If you've ever been to Los Angeles, Darwin, you have. You know the columns at LAX?
Yeah.
He did those. He's a public assemblage artist.
Mm-hmm.
Brilliant. And we loved it. So, but it was a lot of work. We only did one show. So we were talking for a long time about doing it again. About 4 years ago, we were talking to Richard Lanehart. It was going to be Richard and Jill and I, Gary Chang and Steve Roche.
Oh my!
And Richard died right in the middle of it.
That broke my heart when that happened, man.
Oh God, was he was brilliant and a nice man, but he was a brilliant composer.
Yeah.
He really got it, and yeah, that was heartbreaking. So it kind of died out. I went to go see Mort at Red Cat live. Guess who sat next to me? Jill, and that's when it really started. But it took us a year to get to it. Mm-hmm. And she sent out an invitation letter to, she put it together for Chaz and I, Chaz Smith. But Chaz has moved up to Grass Valley now, so it's not really feasible. So she and we've done 4 or 5 shows. They've been great. Some of them we've worked our ways through performance disasters. And then we're tracking a record. It's going to be probably mastered within 2 weeks.
Oh, great.
Look, we're adults. We have busy lives. We have other things in our life. Jill's involved with a lot of things. Her and my performance schedules sometimes don't mesh. I'm going to be doing 3 shows over the winter with Shiro. I don't know how to pronounce his last name. It's Japanese. And Doug Linner up in the Bay Area. And it's a completely different type of music than Zizek Society. It's more San Francisco based. It's more Terry Riley. It's more immediately accessible to the audience. And it's almost all analog. So I'm excited about that. And I love it, dude. I don't know if you've seen the big picture of my ARC system. I haven't turned it on since I moved 4 years ago. Everything's my performance system. And if I could gig every other day, I'd be happy as a lark. I absolutely love it. It's fun.
What kind of system do you have now that you take out when you gig?
I have 8 rows, slightly wider than 84 HP. A lot of it's, of course, Plan B, but I'm not a narcissist. I am, but not that bad. Okay, I mean we're all narcissists, aren't we? But
yes.
I'm not that bad. I've got 2 qubit nebulae. I have 1 mutable instruments module. I have a tip top 1. I have a live loop reflex. I just got the Moto Mouse format filter. I've got a lot of other people's stuff. I got a shitload of 2 HP because I think they're brilliant.
Yeah,
okay, and what I've done, it's kind of cool now, Darwin. We're doing the mastering to this record. There's one piece that's based entirely on a single sample of Glenn Beck rambling off about Benghazi, just a real nutty shit, right?
Right.
I needed the second part of this to be tonal, more tonal. And the motor mouth, I said, Jesus Christ. I mean, before I put my fingers on it, I knew what I was going to do with it. And I got it last week, and boom, I laid it in there. And that's kind of how I approached this. When we were doing Benghazi live, I realized I needed 2 nebulae. One wasn't enough. I bought another one. And it's just, so it's a conglomerate, and it's designed for live.
But when you're doing live, you're not doing sort of like the traditional modular twiddly thing, though. I've seen some videos of some of your live work. You have composed works that you're doing.
Yeah, no, that's Cesix, very much so. And a lot of the sounds I've sampled that I've done in the modular, because not so I can play polyphony, because I don't want to repatch like a madman. Right. Or I've used the whole system on another patch. Mm-hmm. Now, the stuff I'm going to be doing with Doug and Ciro is all tweaking.
Okay.
Wait a minute, tweaking of knobs. I don't want to be taken out of context. I am intentionally not bringing the Rolly or the computer on those gigs. I will be using an iPad, but just as a MIDI sequencer. And as a touch plate pads, to fire other analog events. That's it. So, yeah, it's very composed, these Zizek stuff. But that's fine. I have Jill Frasier. She's brilliant. Why else wouldn't you do it? Right? Jill can, look, our first rehearsal, we worked on the Benghazi piece first. The first day was kind of piddling around. She said, come back tomorrow. I couldn't believe what she got done that night. Exactly what I had my mind on. And I didn't have to tell her. Do you ever listen to Subotnick's Touch?
Yes.
It opens up with the sound of the voice. That's actually what his secretary saying the word touch, and he razor blade the shit out of it. And she did it. And I didn't have to tell her to do that. She got it. Yeah. So, yeah, that music is much more composed. We have a piece in this new show. I'm actually calling it you sound old enough to understand what this means. The Ballad of Commander Cody and His Lost Planetary Airmen. Do you remember that band?
Yes, I do.
Commander Cody. And it's sort of a homage to Ray Manzarek meets Terry Riley meets Steve Reich meets Rainbow and Curved Air. And it's going to be long. It's a completely different vibe, but it's all in the moment, live. So it's a whole different vibe as what I do with Jill.
Sure.
But she knows I'm doing it. I'm not. She's completely fine with it. She's an extremely accomplished archer. Okay. She's a national champion in her class of archery. She's got things to do. Yes.
Oh, that's Shyster. She didn't say a word of that.
Yeah, don't piss her off, dude. She'll go right between the eyes.
Okay, I'm going to keep my distance, and apparently it's a lot longer of a distance than I thought it needed to be.
Yeah, and don't wander in her backyard when you drop over, okay? You might get more than you asked for.
So besides the performance, then, what else have you got on your plate for the near future?
Well, we have the Zizix album coming out. Wait till you see the cover. Your head will explode. We asked Simon Paul to do it, who's the guy that does a lot of the illustration for Download and Skinny Puppy and Subconscious. Then these 3 performances with Ciro and Doug, I'm looking forward to. I'm sure Jill and I will perform again. The Model 12 Duel is coming out, and then maybe someone will invite me for Thanksgiving. Other than that, I got nothing to do.
All right, well, there's the plan.
Yeah. Hey, I really enjoyed this, Darwin, sorry to interrupt. Thank you so much. It's humbling to me that someone thinks about me. It really is.
Well, with that, I'm going to let you go. Have the rest of your evening. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it, man.
Thank you. Thank you. Peace.
Well, what an amazing set of stories. I think it was really great to get a chance to hear Peter's story from Peter, and to also kind of hear how all of this stuff came together for him, where his head's at, and also where he's planning on going with some of his music work. Really interesting stuff. I want to thank you, the listeners, again, first of all, for supporting me through the Kickstarter. You could probably hear some less than ideal microphoning going on in this episode. I'm really looking forward to the updated mic and preamp setup that you guys have helped me get. But with that, I am going to let you go for the week. We'll catch you next time around. Thanks a lot. Bye.